The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes wasn't the familiar ceiling of my own bedroom. It was Daniel's apartment, his expensive watch gleaming on the pillow next to my head, and the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly with notifications. My mouth tasted like regret and tequila, my designer dress wrinkled beyond repair, and my heels scattered across his hardwood floor like evidence at a crime scene. I'm Lysandra Vane, 32 years old, and until that moment, I thought I had my life perfectly orchestrated. Project manager at Morrison & Associates, designer wardrobe, Instagram-worthy apartment shared with my boyfriend Simon, and a reputation for being the fun one at office parties. I prided myself on being modern, sophisticated, someone who could handle her liquor and her relationships with equal finesse. But as I reached for my phone, my hands shaking slightly from the hangover, I realized how spectacularly wrong I was. The group chat was exploding. 23 unread messages in Morrison Squad, our office crew's WhatsApp group. The first few were typical post-party banter, but then I saw it, a photo that made my blood run cold. There I was, passed out in Daniel's bed, my red heels kicked off carelessly, his Rolex gleaming on the white pillowcase, and worst of all, my own caption underneath. Best office party ever. No regrets, living my best life. I didn't remember posting it, I didn't remember taking it, but there it was, time-stamped at 2:47 a.m., with 12 likes already accumulated from my coworkers. "Oh God," I whispered, frantically scrolling through the messages. My colleagues were having a field day with comments ranging from Lysandra's wild side to someone's in trouble with the boyfriend. That's when I saw the voice message. My own voice, slurred and giggling, recorded at 3:10 a.m. "I don't want to go home yet. Simon's probably asleep anyway, and Danny makes the best cocktails. Who needs responsibility when you're having this much fun?" My stomach dropped. Simon. My boyfriend of 4 years, the man who'd been talking about engagement rings and future plans just last week. The same Simon who'd texted me at midnight, asking if I needed a ride home from the office party, and again at 1 a.m., and again at 2 a.m. I quickly opened our text thread. His last message, sent at 2:15 a.m., simply read, "Hope you're safe. We'll talk tomorrow." The timestamp showed he'd seen my group chat posts. He'd heard my voice message. He knew exactly where I was and what I'd done. Daniel stirred beside me, his dark hair tousled, wearing only boxer shorts. He was 29, charming in that dangerous way that made smart women do stupid things, and absolutely the worst person I could have ended up in bed with. Not just because he was my coworker, but because he was exactly the type Simon had always worried about. "Morning, gorgeous," Daniel mumbled, reaching over to touch my arm. "Last night was incredible." I jerked away from his touch, my mind racing. "Daniel, what exactly happened last night? After the shots, I mean." He grinned that lazy smile that had gotten me into this mess. "You really don't remember? You were all over me at the bar, telling everyone how boring your boyfriend was, how you needed some excitement in your life. We came back here around 2 a.m., you posted those cute photos, and then..." He trailed off suggestively. "And then what?" My voice came out sharper than intended. "Relax, Lise. We just passed out. You were too drunk for anything serious, and I'm not that kind of guy. But you were pretty clear about wanting to stay over, instead of going home to what you called your mundane life." I felt sick, not just from the hangover, but from the growing realization that I'd sabotaged 4 years of relationship in one night of what I'd probably called harmless fun. My phone buzzed with a text from Simon. "I'm making coffee. Come home when you're ready to talk." No anger, no accusations, just that calm, measured tone that somehow felt worse than if he'd been screaming. Simon was a software consultant, methodical and logical in everything he did. When he got quiet like this, it meant he was thinking, planning, analyzing the situation from every angle. I grabbed my heels and purse, ignoring Daniel's protests about staying for breakfast. "I have to go. This was a mistake. Come on, don't be dramatic. We're adults. These things happen. But as I called an Uber, I couldn't shake the feeling that these things were about to cost me everything I'd taken for granted. The ride home felt eternal. I tried to craft the perfect explanation, something that would minimize the damage while maintaining my dignity. It wasn't cheating. Nothing had actually happened. It was just a misunderstanding, blown out of proportion by social media and alcohol. Simon was being dramatic, like he always was when it came to my work friends. I practiced my speech in the elevator, key phrases like trust, overreaction, and nothing to worry about ready on my tongue. But when I opened the apartment door and saw Simon sitting at our kitchen table with his laptop open, my carefully rehearsed words died in my throat. He looked up at me with those steady brown eyes that had always made me feel safe, and I realized that safety was probably gone forever. "Coffee's fresh," he said quietly. "Sit down, Lise. We need to talk." I poured myself coffee with hands that trembled slightly, buying time while I figured out how to spin this situation. Simon sat across from me at our white marble kitchen table, the same table where we'd planned vacations and discussed our future just days before. His laptop was open to the Morrison Squad group chat, my incriminating posts displayed in all their humiliating glory. "Simon, before you say anything, I need you to know that nothing happened," I began, using the tone I reserved for difficult clients. "I know how it looks, but appearances can be deceiving." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he clicked something on his laptop, and my own voice filled the kitchen. "I don't want to go home yet. Simon's probably asleep anyway, and Danny makes the best cocktails. Who needs responsibility when you're having this much fun?" The silence that followed was deafening. "That's not what I meant," I said quickly. "I was drunk, Simon. People say stupid things when they're drunk. You know I didn't mean it." "Which part didn't you mean?" His voice was eerily calm. "The part about not wanting to come home to me, or the part about not needing responsibility?" I felt my carefully constructed defense beginning to crumble, so I switched tactics. "You're taking this way too seriously. It was just a work party. I'm allowed to have fun with my colleagues without you micromanaging my every move." "Micromanaging?" For the first time, emotion crept into his voice. "Liz, I texted you 3 times asking if you needed a ride. I stayed up until 3 a.m. worried about you. When I saw those posts, I wasn't angry. I was terrified something had happened to you." I could see the hurt in his eyes, but I couldn't afford to acknowledge it. Acknowledging it would mean admitting I was wrong, and I'd built my entire identity around being the fun, spontaneous one who didn't apologize for living her life. "Look, I appreciate your concern, but I'm 32 years old. I can take care of myself. If you can't handle having a girlfriend who doesn't ask permission to socialize, maybe that says more about you than it does about me." Simon stared at me for a long moment. "Is that really what you think this is about?" "I think you're being dramatic and controlling, yes." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I doubled down. "I think you're so insecure about Daniel that you can't see past your own jealousy to realize that nothing inappropriate happened." "Nothing inappropriate?" He turned the laptop toward me again. "You're in bed with another man, Lysandra. You posted photos of it online. You told our friends and your coworkers that you didn't want to come home to me. How exactly is that appropriate?" I felt cornered, which always brought out my worst instincts. "You know what? Maybe I didn't want to come home. Maybe I'm tired of walking on eggshells around your insecurities. Maybe I wanted one night where I could just be myself without worrying about whether my boyfriend would approve." The words hung in the air between us like a blade. Simon's face went completely blank, and I realized I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. "I see," he said quietly. "Well, thank you for being honest about that." He closed the laptop and stood up. "I'm going to stay at my brother's place for a few days. I think we both need some time to think about what we want." Panic shot through me. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. I was supposed to explain. He was supposed to understand. And then we'd move past it like we always did. Simon didn't leave. Simon didn't give ultimatums. Simon was steady, reliable, predictable. "You're seriously going to leave over this? Over one night where I had a little too much fun?" He paused at the door. "I'm leaving because the woman I love just told me she doesn't want to come home to me, and she doesn't see anything wrong with that." After he left, I sat in our empty apartment staring at my phone. The group chat was still buzzing with activity. My sister Petra had seen the posts and was texting me a string of fire emojis and "you go girl" messages. My mother had called twice, probably to gossip about the drama. But for the first time since waking up in Daniel's bed, I felt truly alone. I decided to take control of the narrative before it spiraled further out of hand. I opened Instagram and crafted a carefully worded post about toxic relationships and living authentically, with subtle hints that Simon was controlling and jealous. Within an hour, I had dozens of supportive comments from friends who didn't know the full story. My phone rang. It was my mother, Elaine. "Darling, I saw your posts. Are you all right? Is Simon giving you trouble about having a social life?" "Hi, Mom. Yeah, he's being really dramatic about a work party. I think his insecurities are finally showing. I always wondered if he was the right fit for you, sweetie. You're such a vibrant, social person, and he's so serious. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise." Hearing my mother validate my perspective felt like a lifeline. "You really think so?" "Absolutely. You're in your 30s, Lysandra. This is the time to live your life, not to be tied down by someone who doesn't appreciate your spirit." After we hung up, I felt more confident in my position. Simon was overreacting. I was the victim here, not him. I'd done nothing wrong except have a good time at a work party. But as I scrolled through the group chat again, I noticed something that made my stomach clench. Daniel had posted a new message. "Thanks for the wild night, Lise. Can't wait for the next office party." 12 people had seen it. 12 people now thought something had definitely happened between us. And somewhere across town, Simon probably had access to the same group chat through mutual friends. I quickly typed a response. "Just a fun night out with colleagues. Nothing more than that." But the damage was already done. Daniel's message had an implication that my clarification only seemed to confirm. I was trying to put out a fire with gasoline. My phone buzzed with a text from Simon's brother, Oliver. "Really, Lise? This is how you treat my brother after 4 years?" Then one from Simon's mother. "I'm very disappointed in you, dear." The support I'd felt from my own family was quickly being overshadowed by the judgment from his. But instead of reconsidering my actions, I felt defensive. They didn't understand the situation. They were taking Simon's side without hearing mine. I called Petra, my younger sister, and biggest supporter. "Petra, I need you to help me with something. Simon's family is attacking me on social media, and I need people to see my side of the story." "Of course. What do you need me to do? Can you post something about how relationships require trust and communication? Nothing too obvious, but something that supports the idea that Simon is being unreasonable." "Already on it, sis. I've got your back." As I hung up, I felt like I was regaining control of the situation. I had my family's support, my friends' sympathy, and a clear narrative that painted me as the victim of an insecure boyfriend's jealousy. What I didn't realize was that Simon wasn't just sitting at his brother's house feeling sorry for himself. He was methodically screenshotting every post, every comment, every message that painted him as the villain in our story. And he was building a case that would destroy everything I thought I knew about damage control. 3 days passed without word from Simon, and I'd almost convinced myself that I was handling the situation perfectly. My social media was flooded with support from friends who saw me as a strong, independent woman standing up to a controlling boyfriend. Petra had rallied our entire family to my side, and even some of my coworkers were sliding into my DMs with messages about red flags in relationships. I was at Morrison & Associates, sitting in our open-plan office, when Daniel approached my desk with that same cocky grin that had started this whole mess. Hey there, party girl. How's the boyfriend drama going? I glanced around nervously. Several coworkers were within earshot, including Jennifer from HR, who'd been giving me strange looks all morning. Daniel, can we not discuss this here? Oh, come on. Everyone knows what happened. Why are we pretending it's some big secret? He leaned against my desk, his voice carrying across the office. I mean, you were pretty clear about wanting to stay over instead of going home to Mr. Boring. My face burned with embarrassment. That's not what happened, and you know it. Really? Because I distinctly remember you telling me how sexually frustrated you were, how Simon never— Stop! I stood up abruptly, my chair rolling backward. That's enough. But Daniel was enjoying himself too much to stop. I'm just saying, if you ever want to finish what we started the other night— The office had gone quiet. I could feel everyone's eyes on us, could practically hear the gossip mill spinning into overdrive. Jennifer from HR was making notes on her phone. We didn't start anything, I said loudly, hoping to salvage some dignity. Nothing happened between us. Daniel's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. That's not what you said when you were unbuttoning my shirt. The lie hit me like a physical blow. I had no memory of unbuttoning anyone's shirt, but the way Daniel said it, with such casual confidence, made everyone in the office believe it had happened. You're lying, I whispered. Am I? He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo I'd never seen before. It was me, clearly drunk, my hands on his chest, his shirt partially open, both of us laughing. This was right before we went to my bedroom. I stared at the photo in horror. I didn't remember it being taken. I didn't remember any of it. But there was the evidence, clear as day, and Daniel was showing it to anyone who wanted to look. Delete that, I demanded. Why? You posted plenty of photos yourself. What's one more? Because it's not what it looks like. Isn't it? Daniel's voice had taken on a cruel edge. Look, Lise, I get that you're trying to save face with your boyfriend, but don't drag me into your lies. We both know what happened. I felt my carefully constructed narrative crumbling around me. Nothing happened. Right. That's why you spent 20 minutes telling me how much better I was than Simon. How you'd been thinking about me for months. How you were tired of pretending to be happy in your boring relationship. Each word felt like a knife. Not because they were lies, though I desperately wanted them to be, but because they sounded exactly like things drunk me might have said. Jennifer from HR appeared at my elbow. Lysandra, could I see you in my office, please? The walk to HR felt like a death march. I could feel my co-workers' eyes following me, could hear the whispered conversation starting before I'd even left the floor. Sit down, Jennifer said, closing the door behind us. We need to discuss what just happened out there. It was just a misunderstanding. Lysandra, I've received 3 complaints this week about inappropriate workplace behavior. The photos you posted over the weekend were bad enough, but what just happened in front of the entire office crossed a line. My mouth went dry. What kind of complaints? Sexual harassment, creating a hostile work environment, and conduct unbecoming of a manager-level employee. Jennifer opened a file on her desk. I have screenshots of your social media posts, witness statements about your behavior at the office party, and now I've personally observed you and Daniel having an inappropriate conversation about your personal relationship. But I was trying to shut him down. I was telling him nothing happened. After he detailed your alleged sexual encounter in front of your subordinates. Jennifer's voice was cold. Lysandra, I need to ask you directly. Did you engage in sexual activity with Daniel Harlow? The question hung in the air. I knew my answer would determine whether I kept my job, but I also knew Daniel had photos and probably witnesses that could contradict whatever I said. I don't remember everything from that night. I was very drunk. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. Jennifer made a note in her file. I'm placing you on administrative leave pending a full investigation. You'll need to gather your personal belongings and leave the premises today. The words hit me like a physical blow. You can't be serious. I'm a project manager here. I have clients, deadlines. Your clients will be reassigned. Your access to company systems has already been revoked. Jennifer stood up. I'll need your badge and laptop. I stumbled out of the HR office in a daze, my career imploding around me. As I packed my desk, I could feel my coworkers watching, whispering, judging. Daniel was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in the break room, letting me take the full brunt of the consequences for both our actions. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw what happened at your office. Thought you should know your boyfriend was asking questions about you and Daniel at Murphy's bar last night. Might want to check your social media. A friend. I frantically opened Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Everything looked normal at first, but then I noticed the comments. New ones, on posts from days ago, from people I didn't recognize. They were sharing details about my behavior at the office party, about things I'd said and done that I didn't remember. Someone had been talking, multiple someones, and they were painting a picture of a woman who'd been planning to cheat on her boyfriend for months, who'd used the office party as an excuse to finally act on her impulses. I called Petra in a panic. Something's happening. People are saying things about me online. My job is investigating me, and Simon is apparently going around asking questions about that night. Slow down, Liz. What kind of things are people saying? That I've been flirting with Daniel for months, that I planned the whole thing, that I was talking about leaving Simon before any of this happened. There was a pause. Were you? Was I what? Talking about leaving Simon, flirting with Daniel. Petra's voice was careful. Because some of the things you've said to me over the past few months, my blood ran cold. What things? About being bored in your relationship, about wondering what you were missing, about Daniel being attractive and fun compared to Simon. I had said those things, in confidence to my sister, never thinking they'd be used against me. But now I realized how they looked in context, how they supported the narrative that I'd been planning this betrayal all along. Petra, you can't tell anyone I said those things. I haven't, but Lise, if Simon's lawyer asked me directly, lawyer? My voice came out as a squeak. What lawyer? I just assumed. I mean, if you guys are breaking up and you live together, there's going to be legal stuff to figure out, right? I hung up and immediately called Simon. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. On the third try, Oliver answered. He doesn't want to talk to you, Lise. Oliver, please, I need to explain. Explain what? How you humiliated my brother in front of your entire social circle. How you're now trying to play the victim when everyone can see exactly what you did. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. And Simon's finally seeing you for who you really are. The line went dead. I sat in my car outside my office building, my entire life crumbling around me, and realized that Simon wasn't just hurt or angry. He was done, and he was making sure everyone knew exactly why. I spent the next week in a haze of anxiety and denial, watching my reputation disintegrate in real time across social media. What started as a few comments from coworkers had snowballed into a full-scale character assassination, with people I barely knew sharing stories about my inappropriate behavior and obvious affair. The worst part was that some of the stories were true, embellished and taken out of context, but true enough that I couldn't deny them outright. Yes, I had complained about Simon being boring at office happy hours. Yes, I had flirted with Daniel at company events. Yes, I had made jokes about needing more excitement in my life. But I'd never intended for any of it to go this far. I was sitting in my apartment, the apartment that still felt like ours, even though Simon hadn't been home in a week, when my mother called with news that made everything worse. Darling, I just got off the phone with your father. He says Simon's been calling around, asking questions about you. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? About your behavior over the past few months. About things you've said about your relationship. About Daniel. Her voice was strained. Honey, what exactly happened that night? For the first time since this whole mess started, I told someone the complete truth about waking up in Daniel's bed with no memory of how I got there, about the photos I didn't remember taking, about the voice messages that sounded like me but felt like they'd been spoken by a stranger. There was a long silence after I finished. "Lysandra," my mother said slowly, "are you saying you think someone drugged you?" The possibility had been lurking in the back of my mind, but I'd been too embarrassed to voice it. "I don't know. Maybe. I've never blacked out like that before, and I didn't drink that much more than usual. Have you told Simon this? He won't take my calls. Then you need to tell someone else. The police, a lawyer, someone who can help you figure out what really happened." But even as my mother said it, I knew how it would sound. A woman caught cheating, claiming she was drugged when the evidence mounted against her. Who would believe me? I'd already lied and deflected so much that my credibility was shot. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Heard about the HR thing. Sorry it got so messy. Want to grab coffee and talk?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Did you drug me that night?" The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before his response came. "WTF Lice? Are you seriously going to try to pin this on me now?" I don't remember anything after the shots. Nothing. That's not normal for me. "You were wasted. People black out when they drink too much. Don't try to make this into something it wasn't." "Then what was it, Daniel? What exactly happened in your apartment?" The dots appeared again, then stopped. No response came. I tried calling him, straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. The number had been disconnected. Panic set in. If Daniel was avoiding me, if he'd changed his number, it meant he was hiding something. But it also meant I had no way to get answers about what had really happened that night. I decided to drive to his apartment building, but when I got there, the doorman told me Daniel had moved out 2 days earlier. No forwarding address. Standing on the sidewalk outside his former building, I felt the last pieces of my defense crumbling. Daniel's sudden disappearance made me look even more guilty, like we'd been co-conspirators who'd been caught and were now turning on each other. My phone rang. It was Jennifer from HR. "Lysandra, I need you to come in tomorrow for a formal interview. The investigation has uncovered some additional information that we need to discuss with you." "What kind of information?" "I can't discuss it over the phone. Can you be here at 9 a.m.? I spent that night lying awake, running through every possible scenario. What had they found? What had Daniel told them before he disappeared? What had my coworkers said about my behavior over the past few months? The next morning, I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit and drove to the office I might never work in again. Jennifer was waiting for me in the conference room, along with 2 people I didn't recognize. "Lysandra, this is Patricia Mills from our legal department and Detective Sarah Chen from the police department." My blood turned to ice. "Police?" "Please sit down," Detective Chen said. Her voice was professional but not unkind. "We're investigating allegations of sexual misconduct in the workplace. I understand you were involved in an incident with Daniel Harlow last weekend." "I was the victim," I said quickly. "I think he might have drugged me." The 3 women exchanged glances. "When did you first suspect you'd been drugged?" Detective Chen asked. "When I realized I couldn't remember anything after doing shots with him. When I woke up in his bed with no memory of how I got there." "But you didn't report the suspicion until today." I felt the trap closing around me. I was confused, embarrassed. I thought maybe I'd just had too much to drink. Patricia Mills opened a file and slid several papers across the table. "These are statements from witnesses at the office party. They describe you as being flirtatious and physically affectionate with Mr. Harlow throughout the evening, well before the shots were consumed." I scanned the statements. My coworkers had painted a picture of a woman who'd been all over Daniel from the moment she arrived at the party, who'd been making suggestive comments and inappropriate jokes, who'd been the aggressor in every interaction. "They're exaggerating," I said weakly. "Are they?" Jennifer pulled out her phone and played a video I'd never seen before. It was me at the office party, clearly drunk but not incapacitated, pulling Daniel onto the dance floor, whispering in his ear, laughing at everything he said. I looked like a woman who was actively trying to seduce her coworker, not a victim being manipulated by a predator. This video was taken at 11 p.m., Detective Chen said. According to witnesses, the shots weren't consumed until after midnight. Can you explain your behavior here? I couldn't. The woman in the video looked like me, sounded like me, but was acting in ways that contradicted everything I'd been telling myself about that night. I need to see a lawyer, I said finally. That's your right, Detective Chen agreed. But I should tell you that Mr. Harlow has already given us a statement. He says you initiated all contact that evening, that you explicitly told him you wanted to go home with him, and that you were conscious and willing throughout your time at his apartment. He's lying. He also provided us with text messages you sent him over the past 3 months. Messages that suggest you'd been planning to leave your boyfriend and start a relationship with him. The room spun around me. What text messages? Patricia Mills slid another paper across the table. It was a printout of a text conversation between my number and Daniel's, spanning several months. Messages that talked about being unhappy with Simon, about wanting excitement, about finding Daniel attractive. I'd never sent those messages, but they were coming from my phone number, and they painted a clear picture of a woman who'd been planning an affair for months. I didn't send these, I whispered. The metadata suggests otherwise, Detective Chen said. Ms. Vane, I think you need to seriously consider getting legal representation. This investigation is expanding beyond workplace misconduct. As I left the office building for what I knew would be the last time, I realized that someone had been planning this for months. Someone had been setting me up, creating a paper trail, building a case that would destroy my life. But I couldn't figure out who, or why, or how to prove it. And with Daniel disappeared, and the evidence mounting against me, I was running out of time to find the truth. The lawyer I hired, Marcus Thompson, was brutally honest about my situation during our first meeting. Sitting in his sterile downtown office, surrounded by law books and certificates that reminded me how serious this had become, I listened as he laid out the case against me. Lysandra, I'm going to be direct with you. The evidence suggests a pattern of premeditated infidelity, not a single night of poor judgment or potential assault. The text messages, the witness statements, the video evidence, it all points to someone who was planning to leave her relationship and had been grooming a coworker for months. But I didn't send those text messages. Someone else had to have access to my phone. Who? And why would they want to frame you for an affair? I couldn't answer that. Simon was the only person who knew my phone password, and the idea that he would set me up was absurd. He was the victim here, not the perpetrator. What about Daniel disappearing? Doesn't that prove he's hiding something? Marcus leaned back in his chair. It proves he's smart. He gave his statement to police, provided his evidence, and removed himself from a volatile situation. From a legal standpoint, he's protected himself perfectly. So, what are my options? Limited. Your employer is almost certainly going to terminate you. The police investigation might not result in charges, but the civil implications are significant. If your boyfriend decides to pursue damages for emotional distress, or if there are shared assets to divide. He trailed off, but I understood. Simon could destroy me financially if he wanted to. There is one thing that bothers me about this case, Marcus continued. The sophistication of the setup, the fake text messages, the strategic timing, the way evidence was preserved and witnesses were prepared. This feels orchestrated. By who? That's what we need to figure out. Who has access to your phone? Who knew about your relationship problems? Who would benefit from destroying your relationship with Simon? I spent the rest of the day making a list of everyone who had had access to my phone over the past few months. The list was depressingly short. Simon, Petra, my parents, and a few close friends. None of them had any reason to destroy my life. That evening, I was sitting in my empty apartment when I heard a key in the lock. My heart leaped. Simon was coming home. We could finally talk this through, figure out what had really happened, start to rebuild. But when the door opened, it wasn't Simon. It was Oliver, Simon's brother, and he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a woman I didn't recognize, carrying a briefcase and looking very official. "Lysandra, this is Amanda Foster, Simon's attorney. We're here to collect his belongings and serve you with some papers." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "Simon sent his lawyer." "Simon is protecting himself," Oliver said coldly, something he should have done months ago. Amanda stepped forward and handed me a thick envelope. "These are separation papers, a restraining order requiring you to cease all contact with Mr. Greaves, and a civil suit for damages related to intentional infliction of emotional distress. You're suing me. Your actions have caused significant harm to my client's reputation and emotional well-being. The public nature of your affair, the humiliation you caused him in front of friends and family, the damage to his professional relationships, all of that has quantifiable costs." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. The numbers were staggering. Simon was seeking damages of $200,000, plus legal fees, plus exclusive ownership of our apartment and everything in it. "He can't do this. We're not even married." "Actually, he can," Amanda said. "You lived together for 4 years, presented yourselves as a committed couple, and made joint financial decisions. Under state law, that creates certain legal obligations you violated when you engaged in a public affair." "It wasn't an affair. Nothing happened." Oliver laughed bitterly. "Liz, we've all seen the photos. We've all heard the voice messages. We've all watched you humiliate my brother on social media while playing the victim. Just stop." "You don't understand. I understand perfectly." Oliver's voice was ice cold. "You got caught cheating, and now you're trying to lie your way out of it. But Simon's done playing games." They spent the next hour packing Simon's belongings while I sat on the couch, reading through the legal papers that would bankrupt me. The restraining order was particularly devastating. I couldn't contact Simon directly, couldn't go to his workplace, couldn't even mention him on social media. After they left, I called my parents in tears. "They're taking everything," I sobbed to my mother. "The apartment, the furniture, my savings. Simon's suing me for $200,000. "Oh, sweetheart, can he really do that?" "According to his lawyer, yes. Mum, I think someone set me up. Those text messages to Daniel, I never sent them. Someone wanted this to happen." There was a long pause. "Lysandra, honey, I need to tell you something. Your father and I have been talking and, well, we think you should consider settling this quickly." "What do you mean?" "We mean take responsibility for what happened and try to minimize the damage. Fighting this in court will only make things worse." I felt like my own parents were abandoning me. "You don't believe me either." "We believe you made some poor choices, and now you need to deal with the consequences like an adult." After I hung up, I sat alone in the apartment that would soon belong entirely to Simon, surrounded by the wreckage of my life, and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. That's when I noticed something odd. My laptop was sitting on the coffee table, but I distinctly remembered leaving it on the kitchen counter that morning. Someone had been in my apartment while I was at the lawyer's office. I opened the laptop and checked the browser history. Someone had accessed my email, my social media accounts, and my text messages, but they'd been careful. Nothing was deleted, nothing was changed. They'd just been looking, gathering information, building a case. And suddenly I realized who had been orchestrating my downfall from the very beginning. The revelation hit me like a freight train as I stared at my laptop screen. Only one person had access to my apartment, my devices, and intimate knowledge of my relationship problems. Only one person could have created those fake text messages and known exactly when and how to deploy them for maximum damage. Simon. My boyfriend of 4 years, the man I'd trusted with everything, had been systematically destroying my life from the inside out. But why? I grabbed my phone and called Marcus Thompson, my lawyer. "I know who set me up," I said without preamble. "It was Simon." "Lysandra, that's a serious accusation. What evidence do you have?" "Someone was in my apartment today while I was at your office. They accessed my laptop, my accounts, everything. Simon's the only person with keys and passwords." "That's circumstantial at best. Why would he orchestrate his own humiliation?" "Because it's not his humiliation, it's mine. Think about it. He comes out looking like the perfect victim, the loyal boyfriend betrayed by his cheating girlfriend. I come out looking like a manipulative liar who planned an affair for months." There was a pause while Marcus considered this. "It's possible, but proving it would be nearly impossible. And it doesn't explain Daniel's involvement. Maybe Daniel was in on it, maybe Simon paid him, or blackmailed him, or—" "Lysandra, you're starting to sound paranoid. I need you to focus on facts, not theories." But I couldn't let it go. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Simon's calm reaction to finding me in Daniel's bed, his methodical collection of evidence, his decision to involve lawyers and police instead of simply breaking up with me. This wasn't the behavior of a heartbroken boyfriend. This was the behavior of someone executing a plan. I spent the next 3 days trying to find proof. I combed through our shared financial accounts, looking for payments to Daniel or private investigators. I analyzed the metadata on the fake text messages, searching for clues about their origin. I even hired a computer forensics expert to examine my devices. Everything came back clean. If Simon had orchestrated this, he'd covered his tracks perfectly. On Thursday morning, I received a call that changed everything. "Ms. Vane, this is Detective Chen. I have some updates on your case that I think you'll want to hear." "Did you find Daniel?" "We did. He's been staying with his sister in Portland. But that's not why I'm calling. We've completed our analysis of the text messages you claimed were fake." My heart raced. "And?" "They're real, Lysandra. They were sent from your phone, using your accounts, with no evidence of tampering or third-party access. The timestamps, IP addresses, and device signatures all match your normal usage patterns." The words hit me like a physical blow. "That's impossible." "I'm afraid it's not. We also interviewed Mr. Harlow again, and he provided additional evidence of your relationship. Photos, voice messages, even a hotel receipt from a lunch meeting you had 3 weeks before the office party." "What hotel receipt?" "The Marriott downtown. You met him there on a Tuesday afternoon, according to his credit card records and security footage." I felt the room spinning around me. I remembered that Tuesday, I'd told Simon I was having lunch with a client, but I'd actually been meeting with Daniel to discuss a work project. A completely innocent meeting that I'd lied about, only because I knew Simon was uncomfortable with my friendship with Daniel. "That was a work meeting," I whispered. "At a hotel?" "The restaurant there. We were discussing the Morrison project." "For 2.5 hours? In a restaurant that our investigation shows you never actually entered?" The implication was clear. Security footage would show Daniel and me entering the hotel together and leaving together hours later. To anyone watching, it would look like exactly what Detective Chen was suggesting. "I want to speak to my lawyer," I said. "That's probably wise. Ms. Vane, I should tell you that we're preparing to file charges. Fraud, perjury, filing a false police report. You've wasted significant police resources with these allegations." After she hung up, I sat in my empty apartment and finally faced the truth I'd been avoiding for weeks. I had sent those text messages to Daniel. I had been planning to leave Simon. I had initiated everything that happened at the office party and afterward. I just didn't want to remember it. The woman in those photos, in those videos, sending those messages, that was me. The real me. The me that I'd been suppressing and denying because she didn't fit the image I wanted to project. I'd been living a double life for months, maybe years, complaining about Simon to anyone who would listen, flirting with Daniel at every opportunity, building toward the moment when I would finally act on my impulses. The office party had just been the excuse I'd been waiting for. My phone rang one last time. It was Simon, calling from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Lysandra." His voice was calm, professional, like he was calling a business associate instead of the woman he'd lived with for 4 years. "Simon, I'm calling to let you know that I'm withdrawing the civil suit." I felt a surge of hope. "Does that mean—" "It means I've gotten what I wanted. You've been fired, arrested, and publicly humiliated. Your family and friends now know exactly who you really are. Destroying you financially won't bring me any additional satisfaction." The coldness in his voice was terrifying. This wasn't the Simon I'd known, the gentle, patient man who'd loved me despite my flaws. "I never meant for any of this to happen," I said. "Yes, you did. You planned all of it. You just didn't plan on getting caught." "That's not true. Lysandra, I've been recording our conversations for months. I have evidence of every lie you've told, every manipulation you've attempted, every time you've tried to gaslight me into believing I was the problem." My blood turned to ice. "You've been recording me. I've been protecting myself, and it's a good thing I did because you're exactly as manipulative and dishonest as I suspected." "Simon, please. Goodbye, Lysandra. Lose my number." The line went dead, and I finally understood the full scope of what had happened. Simon hadn't orchestrated my downfall. He'd simply documented it. Every lie, every manipulation, every moment of gaslighting had been carefully recorded and preserved. I'd destroyed myself. Simon had just made sure everyone could see it clearly. As I sat in the ruins of my life, facing criminal charges and complete social isolation, I realized that the woman I'd been pretending to be, the victim, the misunderstood girlfriend, the target of a conspiracy, had never existed. I was exactly who everyone now knew me to be, a liar, a cheater, and a manipulator who'd finally been held accountable for her actions. And for the first time in years, that was the truth.